Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today at our CICMH webinar. My name is Tarin, and I am one of the knowledge and research leads here at the Center for Innovation in Campus Mental Health. What I will do before we begin is I will go over some housekeeping as well as our land acknowledgement. I want to start this session by acknowledging that even though we are here virtually, we are joining in from many ancestral lands from various Indigenous communities. I am currently in Toronto, Treaty 13 territory, and the home of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Wendat peoples, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Chippewa, and the people who may still be unrecorded. As a settler myself, it is my duty to acknowledge the effects of colonialism that we still see today and the way I may be participating in it and the ways I can actively push back against it. As we go through this webinar, I want you to think about how you might be able to support your Indigenous students as well as your Indigenous colleagues within your role and promote a whole campus approach to health and wellness. We want to be active participants in the reconciliation process, and that can look like a lot of things. It can start with education, but also learning about their language, arts, worldviews, as well as supporting organizations that help Indigenous communities. So I will go through a few housekeeping before we begin. I see that somebody has turned on closed captioning, which is what I'm going to talk about. Closed captioning can be found at the bottom of the screen. You can turn it on. There's also translated captioning, so I will go through that in a few moments. The Q&A portion will occur at the end, so we will have around 10 to 15 minutes at the end to do Q&A, and if you have a question, please submit it into the Q&A function that you can find at the bottom of your screen as well. The recording will be available by end of day or by tomorrow morning, so if you are unable to stay for the whole time, no worries, but we will have that available for you to watch. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our speakers. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, so Chris, you can share yours.
We should all be able to see that first slide. So the first slide highlighted understanding mental health and well-being, specifically focused course for students in the trades. So thank you, Taryn. We can probably go ahead and get started. And it's a pleasure to be here and to see friendly faces, individuals that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last couple of years, specifically on this project. I suppose to introduce myself to start off, my name is Christophe Coulombe. I work as a mental health educator with the Canadian Mental Health Association, the Sudbury Manitoulin branch. And I'm joined today in co-facilitating this session with Seija Korpela and also with Brian Lobban, who is with the Cambrian College. And I'll maybe start off by just asking you to introduce yourself, Seija, as we get started as the director of the Glen Crosby Center.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Seija Korpela and I'm the director of the Glen Crosby Center. So I'm responsible for the accessibility, counseling, wellness, EDI portion here at the college. I've also, this is my third year, I believe, of getting the wonderful funding through CICMH in order to be able to develop partnerships with external partners. And today we'll be talking a bit about what we're trying to accomplish in trades. And Brian Lobban is here, Dean of the Dean of Trades. I sent him my invites, so he's showing up as a second Seija Korpela. He's not my twin. And I'll let Brian introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. As Seija said, my name is Brian Lobban. I'm the Dean of the School of Skills Training and Engineering Technology at Cambrian College. And I've been really blessed with joining Seija and Chris on this project over the last couple of years. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Excellent. And behind the scenes as well, we have several individuals who have been a real strong supportive cast. I'm thinking of my marketing and communication specialist, Dana, and my manager, Trevor, and many others at CMHA who have provided some support, along with individuals from Cambrian College as well, who have been there to really guide this project into what we have today. So we're basically scratching the surface a little bit on what we've shared and how we connected and communicated with students at Cambrian College, and to really provide the community supports and also the campus supports that are available on site. These slides that I will walk through are just a sample of some of the education and awareness that we're bringing to students. I know if we were going to go over the whole entire presentation with students, we would talk about defining mental health. We would talk about what anxiety and depression looks like, and we would certainly want to conclude by coming up with strategies on how to deal with stress. And we all understand that when we're working, for example, to support students, specifically in the trades, and that was our main priority, was to look at how do we support individuals who are really needing the tools to be able to deal with factors that could decline their mental well-being once leaving school and transitioning into the workforce. And we understand that the challenges are very different when it comes to working in the trades. And it's important to remember that, once again, mental health, mental illness, it's definitely, it's dependent on many factors. And we want students to understand that it's okay to not be okay, and to really seek the support, and to ask questions, and to talk about how they're feeling, and talk about how supports are needed. And when I think of young individuals, looking at engaging and dealing with having the difficult conversations around emotions during exam time, or during moments where they're going through life transitions as a young adult, we want to open that conversation. We want to be there to not only on campus but also in the community to build that strength. And I'll turn it over to Seija just to talk a little bit about why engaging students is really the key element of this project.
I'd be glad to. At Cambrian College, trades is in an area that the distance between the services, mental health services, accessibility services, most student services are a good 20-minute to 25-minute walk from the trades area. I do know currently with the increase in trade students is that they're not able to always make an hour appointment in our areas. So what we were able to do with Brian is he was able to find a room, so different down in the trades areas. So we're making a concerted effort to go down into the trades areas to provide various services, as well as the mental health and wellness piece. I do know statistically, trade students are not likely to come to us for mental health supports. And some of it is distance, and I think a lot of it is stigma that's associated with it. And I think there's two lanes that we need to think about in trades. It's women going into a male-dominated field and the challenges that they're going to be facing, which can create mental health challenges, as well as trades, male trades individuals, and looking at reducing the stigma associated with mental health, in particular with addictions, and being able to deal with the pressures and the stressors that's involved, not only in academics, but they're also our future leaders. And I'm hoping Brian will talk about how important industry is in terms of being able to speak about mental health and how it's supported in the workplace. And I think it needs to be an open conversation. And when we started this project, we aimed for an actual course, and we really needed to pare back. Students needed to feel comfortable with who we are and why we're there, and we couldn't push it onto them to be active. So when they see me down in trades, many people refer to me, oh, there's a lady for mental health. And I think I kind of chuckled at that, but it's also the message is coming across. Over the last couple of weeks, CMHA is talking to students down in the trades on a monthly basis, and they're actually saying, when is CMHA coming back? So I think those kinds of interactions at a very simplistic level, it's okay to chat openly about struggles. And I hope at some point when they know what the resources are we saving lives? I'd like to think we are. Are we helping people to access resources even without our knowledge? I certainly hope they are. But I think that ends up being the point, and being good citizens once they graduate and being able to support each other in their fields. And I'm quite passionate about this, and I think what I've heard from trade students is that they, particularly graduates, is with the supply and demand being as unpredictable as it is, they're also being chastised by customers for not being able to get the work done in 6 to 8 weeks. So they're also the pressure they're getting in the real world is actually phenomenal, and providing them with some tools, providing them with a toolkit as Selena and CMHA have developed. I think that's huge moving forward. And the resource piece is huge, and it starts with a conversation, and we need to push that piece. And we did have last year, last January, Brian had invited all first year students to an afternoon session with CMHA. And that session, he tried to make it mandatory, but we all know it wasn't attached to any grades. So the students figured that out. But initially we had about a little over 100 students. By the end of the day, it rolled down to, I think, between 20 and 40 students, which is okay. If we help one student, in my opinion, we've helped one student, and we're better off for it. And I think it's something we could launch again, but I think one of the learnings from that is trade students are kinetic learners for the most part. They need to be hands-on. And I think narratives and having industry partners and having CMHA come in as an external, how are we supporting people in the community? What are some of the struggles that industry people have had, and how are you dealing with it? Because it's that dialogue that's going to reduce a stigma in the long run. And I think Brian, if he can speak to, like, even with the faculty, they need to be comfortable being able to speak with students who are struggling, and talk about the resources and that kind of thing. I do know academically there's a lot of pressures, particularly in the area of health and safety. Are these students safe on the equipment? So there's the whole liability piece, but we need to have the conversation, be able to point out the resources for the students. And I could talk all day. So we did do during when we had the big session, a couple of things that came out with trades, in particularly with substance use, and how do they cope with mental health. On a rating of 1 to 5, 5 being most comfortable, These students indicated 3.82. They're comfortable talking about mental health. It doesn't delve into who they are going to talk to. They do feel comfortable using services and resources. And I think if we were doing another survey, what type of resources are they using? So I think CMHA is kind of looking at are the people that are accessing their external resources in the post-secondary system. I know which services and resources are available on campus, which is a good number, but there's room for improvement. I feel comfortable talking about my substance use health 3.52. And I think again, there it's who are they talking to? And getting a bit more context in that would be a next step with we're polling and surveying students. And I know where to go if I have concerns about my substance abuse, and a little over half said that they do. And I think it just goes to show that there's work to be done. This was a survey done on a smaller group of individuals, and I think Brian has probably close to 1,500 students, and I think this type of survey college-wide would be really important as well.
And in September and November, we had CMHA staff on site, specifically, in the trades building, and meeting with faculty members, meeting with students directly. I participated in both of those events, and it was a great opportunity for us to inform individuals about the great campus supports, but also the community supports that are there. And that's kind of the benefit here, is that we're bringing some education and some awareness with this project, but we're also connecting individuals with immediate supports. And that's the key piece. And when you think of, dealing with stressful situations, even saving lives, like you talked about, for certain individuals, we need to continue that relationship. Now, we will, of course, participate in community service fairs on campus on a regular basis. We usually do 3 of them a year, which is separate from this project. And this funding has been beneficial to really ensure that we support this cohort in a way that allows them to feel supported and not isolated, as they transition from school to eventually workplace.
Yeah, and I think if Brian, if you don't mind just speaking a little bit why you think it's important to embed mental health and wellness into some pieces of curriculum.
Thanks, Seija. So I guess where we started with this obviously is just seeing the increase in the needs for mental health supports on campus. But when we bring the conversation into our program advisory committee meetings, where we're talking with individuals from industry, so carpentry, HVAC, heavy duty equipment, truck and coach, and all of the different industries where our students go to work. And I started asking the question, how the mental health problems that they're having on the job site are affecting them. One of the big challenges that came out is we're already having a problem attracting skilled workers. And we need to keep the workers that we have healthy. And one of the big challenges is, well, let me just give one example. So younger people are being hired, they're being given access to a company truck. And they're driving the company truck because they have to go and pick up their colleagues who have lost their licenses either through DUI or other problems. And they're going around, they're picking these people up in the morning, bringing them to work because they can't drive themselves. They've lost their license. And over time, the problems with addictions and mental health get to the point where that highly skilled, experienced person actually is no longer able to attend on the job site. And that's in a world where we're already having problems supplying the skilled labor that that industry needs. So there's a big problem here. So how do we address that as a college before people get out into industry? How do we give them some tools? We can't solve all the world's problems. We can't take that on, but we can provide some education. And then when the employees get out into industry, industry can take over. So there's a lot of industry who have programs, who have EFAP programs, but they can't even have the conversation with their employees because their employees aren't willing to talk about it. So we started thinking that it became critical for us to start normalizing the conversation in college, to start talking about mental health, to start talking about addictions, to start talking about how stigma stops people from getting the help that they may need, and how can we solve those problems. And I very naively thought when the dean says you have a mandatory session at 1:30 in the afternoon and you send that out to 400 students, I'm going to have 400 students sitting in the audience. I learned a very important lesson that day. It was stressful for me to go through that experience, to have everybody here set up to provide this excellent training. And that's really what we wanted to do on an ongoing basis is we kind of put it out there into the universe. We wanted to have a training session for every first year group. So we're talking, between, if we're just talking first year students, we're probably talking around 1,500 students. Every fall would come in and receive some type of training. And you couldn't do it as a 1 credit course or a 4 credit course because students, they're going to treat it like it's just a hoop to jump through when we want it to be more meaningful. So we started designing this idea around a workshop. How can we deliver a workshop to a large group of people and make it a meaningful experience for them? And that's what we were kind of aiming at. And it took us a long time to get to the point where we were at last year. We ran it in January. I learned some very important lessons about how to run events. And from there, we've arrived at this point where, okay, we know we need to do more. So now we've got a room in our space because students need to trip over mental health supports at the time they need it, because they're not going to make a plan to go seek it a 20, 25-minute walk across campus. So if it's right there, right by the Tim Hortons, right by the washroom, they're more likely to trip over it when they need it. And that's really important. And then this training, we're going through a process of embedding it. So the CICMH trades toolkit helped us develop this curriculum that's 45 minutes long. It's video training. And we have a mandatory health and safety orientation to every shop. And students have to do this health and safety orientation in order to have access to the shop. And we're embedding this video content into that health and safety training. So yeah, you need to know how to dial 7911 if you need a first responder in the shop because of an accident, but you also need to know how to recognize and how to talk with each other around mental health and addictions and stigma. So these are important conversations, and I'm still on a pathway to developing this as a series of courses that will be delivered across the entire School of Engineering and Technology and Trades, where we have a section on mental health and addictions that are delivered as a course, and not a general elective course, but a core course to their curriculum. But that's a ways off, and it's this team who's gonna help us get there.
That's great. Thanks, Brian. And again, it's a collaborative approach, right? We know we don't have to do this all on our own, and we're letting students know as well that they don't have to be alone. And when I think of that transition of working, even working shift work, like even having a conversation about shift work and how it can have an impact on our well-being, and I don't know, when you think of daylight reduced, in the wintertime, like what does that look like in the workplace? So those are the conversations that we need to have. And this production, or this little video Brian is referring to, talks a little bit about that. And it talks about what is a balanced relationship in a workplace. Because again, when I'm communicating in a way that's going to be helpful, I'm going to probably have a lot more joy and happiness in my life. So the intent of trying to bring a curriculum in place is difficult, but I think using videos, using displays and promotional items, and on the screen you kind of see a few bookmarks that we've kind of used and adopted. And I should highlight that our office, so our intake office, of course, which is our first point of contact for anyone accessing supports, this QR code actually leads them directly to a self-referral. And since September of 2024, nine, and you might think that's not a lot, but 9 Cambrian students have actually connected with us using this QR code. Now, I can't tell you how many individuals came in person. I can't tell you how many individuals called the office to talk to someone. But what I can tell you is that if we can see some increased access to supports, and even having these 9 students from Cambrian, because we know if it's a Laurentian University student or Collège Boreal student, we know that there's 9 Cambrian students since we started in September to have these sessions in the trades department who have actually talked to someone. And that's really the key. The key is about starting the conversation, continuing the conversation, and looking at ways and strategies to cope with the difficult stress in our lives. Again, relationships are often a factor, and we talk about not only those external environmental factors, but we talk about our own personal feelings and how we are resilient and how we can bounce back. So I think overall, when I look at the promotional material and, what can I do to stay well, it really comes back to, using a communication strategy that allows us to help individuals help themselves. And the best way to do that with students is to open the door and to talk about stigma and to normalize the conversation, when it comes to talking about our mental well-being. Mental health first aid was one that we've had an opportunity with this project and previous projects to bring forward to students, and I think that's very helpful. I think that's something that we continue to offer and provide support for. But we do know that resources have to be shared, and I think now I'm going to be handing it over to Selena. Our half hour has come to an end, but I'm going to turn it over to Selena to really talk about resources that we need to continue to have. Because again, if you notice one of those slides talked about, half of us are struggling to even ask for help. So when we're looking at that and we're looking at the stats, and I didn't really spend much time, but we do understand that mental health, mental well-being is something that needs to be it needs to be front and center when we think of helping people find joy and happiness in their lives. And work can be very fulfilling. We want people to excel. And we want them to be safe as well. We kind of heard a little bit about health and safety. So these are resources that we talk about, and of course the toolkit here that Selena is going to share, and we'll hopefully be able to answer some of your questions at the end before we wrap up. So Selena, I'll turn it over to you, and we'll do the questions shortly after. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Chris. Let me just share my screen here. Make sure it all looks okay. We all good with my screen, Taryn?
Yeah, it looks good.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you, Chris, Seija, and Brian for that presentation. I'm just going to be adding on to it and just diving more into the toolkit that I created. But first, I guess I should introduce myself. So hi, I'm Selena, and here at the center, I am the campus community lead. So I work with a lot of partnerships. So like Seija and Chris's partnership, I kind of help them out with that. And I'm going to talk about the toolkit that I created that was recently published in December, all about supporting skilled trade students. So I'm just going to do a quick run through of the toolkit timeline. So this started out as an idea in early 2024. We did a needs survey. I sent it out just to get feedback, and I really wanted to make sure this toolkit would be of most benefit to those who would be using it in the post-secondary setting. And then we did a call for collaborators. So I had a few people from post-secondary interested in writing and reviewing the toolkit. We did that over the course of the summer. And then from there, it went for a translation. We added some fun and neat graphics, and then it was published on our site in December. So I really want to highlight from the needs survey, I got a lot of feedback from post-secondary staff about the need for this type of toolkit in that realm. And these are just two quotes that I pulled from that survey that I think really speak to the importance of this toolkit and of supporting trade students in general as well. So, one says, there's a lot of hesitance to open up about one's mental health due to stigma from classmates as well as instructors. And there's a fear of coming out as queer or trans in these programs due to toxic masculinity, queerphobia, and transphobia. And the other quote says, for people in the trades, their mental health challenges may present differently to those in other areas of life. Things like substance abuse, anger, isolation, and loneliness can be more common symptoms of a need for help. So from that survey where I pulled those two quotes from, like I said, I use that to kind of guide the creation of the toolkit in terms of what to include in important areas of focus. And you'll see these are kind of the three main areas that are in the toolkit. So first we have equity considerations. So considering Indigenous trade students, women in trades, and 2S LGBTQIA+ trade students and the unique challenges and barriers that they may face. We have a work-life balance section, so talking about burnout, stress management, coping skills, and encouraging help-seeking behavior in students for them to reach out for help when they need it. And then nature of apprenticeships kind of ties in numerous considerations when it comes to supporting trade mental health. So there's, of course, the stigma, accessibility and accommodation, safety and financials, toxic masculinity, and substance use. So taking these three, I'm going to call them buckets, I was kind of able to garner, understand, and use this information to guide the research and recommendations within the toolkit. So I'm going to go over each bucket very briefly. We don't have a lot of time here, and of course the toolkit goes more in depth, but I kind of want to give you a sense of what the toolkit entails and the pieces that could be helpful to you. So first is equity considerations, and kind of keeping the our EDIAA at the forefront to promote equitable access to services and programming. So first, starting with 2S LGBTQIA+ apprentices, they face elevated levels of stress because of harassment, microaggressions, feeling unsafe in revealing their true selves, and having a lack of supportive networks to lean on. And of course, once they secure their apprenticeships, many of them are at risk of a lack of, for example, gender-neutral washrooms, inadequate competency and safety from instructors and administrators, and of course, homophobic, biphobic, and transphobic language. Indigenous trade students. So overall in Canada, there's about, Indigenous apprentices make up about 6.3% of all Canadian apprentices. And they tend to have a higher discontinuation of apprenticeships and lower completion rates due to disproportionate barriers. So lack of cultural awareness, financial and administrative barriers, and experiences of discrimination. And then we have women. So women in the skilled trades face, as alongside with the others, numerous barriers, and they're also at risk of sexism and sexual assault. With some women apprentices, the study shows that they cite that sexual harassment actually can come from both educators and classmates. So an example from the study that's cited in the toolkit is women apprentices were saying that instructors were comparing machinery parts to women's bodies, or there's a lack of response to sexualized talk between male classmates. And alongside, there's other stressors that women can face, such as, having ill-fitting protective gear, physical overcompensation, and harassment, isolation, and discrimination. So each section in this toolkit comes with a list of spotlights. So spotlights from programs. So of course, the CMHA Sudbury Cambrian College partnership is highlighted in the toolkit, alongside other colleges who put work in to kind of neutralize these barriers and increase mental health support for trade students. So there's a spotlight program, and there's also a recommendation program. So recommendations that you can take away from the toolkit to maybe implement or try to implement within your realm. So for the equity considerations piece, of course, professional development. So having maybe diversity and inclusivity training to equip staff with the knowledge and awareness that they may need. Encouraging gender autonomy. So a quick definition of gender autonomy, it refers to the extent to which someone, regardless of their gender, can succeed in their chosen career path without cost or disadvantage resulting from that choice. Of course, creating a supportive network, and then campus community partnerships. So Seija and Chris's partnership is a great example of how you could work together to target equity deserving groups and enhance those service supports and increase inclusivity as well. The work-life balance section. So I've chosen 3 areas to focus on here, but of course there's more in the toolkit. I wish I had all the time in the world to talk about this, but I'm trying to keep it a little bit short here. So of course, burnout, like Seija was mentioning, having those 8 to 12 week blocks on campus. And if the campus services are farther away from the trades buildings, students have a very compressed time, and it's challenging to fit in those counseling and support services during their apprenticeship and during their academic journey. So just having that dedicated time, burnout is a significant risk factor for apprentices, and it can even be hazardous in some situations. If they're on the risk of burnout and they're operating heavy machinery, or they're having to make these quick decisions or calculations, it could be costly to their health and their safety. Help-seeking behavior as well. So help-seeking behavior in the toolkit, we defined it as actively seeking out advice or supportive action in response to a problem or distressing experience. And of the 3 types of stigmas that there are, personal, perceived, and public, personal stigma is significantly associated with lower levels of help-seeking behavior, along with being male. So being male and having this personal stigma really lowers your chances of engaging in help-seeking behavior. And it's a barrier to their own needs, right? Because they don't understand how serious their needs are. It's leading them to think no one will understand their problems. And tying into the skilled trades, the idea of these traditional masculine norms of being perceived as weak or not strong enough to resolve their problems on their own, and the feelings that may be of embarrassment to expressing emotions. Overall, men in apprenticeships exhibit low help-seeking behaviors. And then coping strategy. So as Seija mentioned, substance use is seen as a big coping strategy within the trades. And they're subjected to high levels of stress and pressures. And while there are healthy ways to cope, some have cited, exercising, talking to friends, engaging in hobbies. There are some unhealthy coping mechanisms that can do more harm than good. And so with trades and coping strategies, the toolkit really emphasizes the importance of self-compassion to students, that they be kind and compassionate to themselves when they're feeling inadequate or suffering, rather than being harsh and critical. This kind of adaptive tool, the toolkit goes more into how you can kind of present this idea to trade students, but having this idea and this tool of being compassionate and expressing self-compassion can really help them thrive in adverse situations and cope with stressors in a way that won't leave them exhausted and defeated and on the verge of burnout. And again, some recommendations based on this work-life balance section. Implementing a formal support system for trade students. So there's some spotlights in the toolkit that talk about how some schools have a designated trade-specific support system. So whether that's an apprentice specialist, a trades mental health liaison, a mentor, a peer supporter, or just someone with lived experience of being a tradesperson, they're kind of there to act as a formal mentor and provide that support and guidance and just additional support that they need And tying into peer support, they have that lived experience, they have that in common with them, and it just builds a stronger relationship. Community resources readily available. So like CMHA had their bookmarks, that kind of having them there in the students' face so that they know what they are, where they are, and how they can access them. Diverse online opportunities for help seeking. So this is one where kind of changing your delivery services to include online help seeking can be very beneficial. Students exhibiting usually lower levels of mental well-being are typically more likely to benefit from online help-seeking programs, especially if they're tailored to the students' needs. So if they're tailored to work-life balance, if they're tailored to time management, whatever it may be, students are typically more likely to seek that out online than in person, and especially given their apprenticeships and their academic journey of being on campus, being off campus, off campus. It could just be a way to make sure there always is something available to them. Peer support programs, of course, research shows that trade students are more inclined to seek out support from informal versus formal sources, so from peers versus a counselor. And a peer support program is obviously a great avenue that encourages that and help-seeking behavior, whether it be either a buddy system or a peer helper network. Developing a care plan. So some colleges have created this where incoming trade students, you develop a care plan with them. So this plan kind of sets up how and where they can seek help if they need it, who they have available to them for contacting in times of need. Is it a friend? Is it a hotline? Is it an app? And just the resources available to them as they move throughout their academic journey so that they are prepared when they are in times of need. They have this already laid out for them. They don't need to think, and it's all there for them to just access when it's needed. And then the last bucket is nature apprenticeships. The first one is accessibility and accommodation. So there's two key barriers to successfully moving through an apprenticeship. And from studies, those two barriers are lack of willingness to hire and train apprentices with disabilities from employers and a lack of sufficient information about learning resources and accommodations prior to apprenticeship. So it can be difficult with students with disabilities and for those who may not even have a formal diagnosis, but just have a history of encountering academic challenges to learn material that's conveyed to them that's not compatible with their learning style. So, you know, maybe they're more of a kinetic learner or a visual learner, and going from an apprenticeship to a classroom or vice versa can be a challenging time for them to adjust. So, you know, maybe they need extra time for reading and writing. They need maybe laptops with audio module software. So just being aware of these, and because they are on campuses for shorter periods of time, getting this done ahead of time can be extremely beneficial to the student, to the staff, and everyone involved in the process. Toxic masculinity. So a harmful view of tradespeople is that they're given their nature of profession that they must be tough, they must be strong, you know, they can't show any weakness, so to speak. And because their livelihood depends on this, which in some cases can be internalized. And internalizing these harmful perceptions makes an individual more vulnerable to negative health outcomes and just perpetuates the personification of toxic masculinity. So you'll see some quotes on there of examples that have been pulled from research of common phrases that exude toxic masculinity. So saying to man up, saying boys will be boys, saying get over it, don't be such a girl. Those just kind of perpetuate that motion. And this is where we need to start kind of speaking on it more. And the last piece I want to touch on for nature apprenticeships is safety and financials. So with most apprenticeships consisting of a couple of thousand hours of work, they're constantly being subjected to physical demanding environments, and people living with chronic pain in general, just a heightened risk of suicide and depression. So you'll see a stat there about masonry apprentices and how displaying signs of musculoskeletal injury symptoms. And this is just known to be associated with workplace accidents as well, because you're trying not to agitate those areas as you're working, which can lead to accidents and put your safety at risk. And then, of course, some financial costs. So transportation costs, you know, childcare in some cases, tools, equipment, books, all come into play and are a factor in apprenticeships. those recommendations, doing that early outreach so their students are aware of accommodations, how to do it beforehand, how to get the help they need for accessibility services and accommodations. Reducing stigma, so just a general mental health stigma. Reduction to increased accessibility and utilization of support services. And then attempting to maybe embed some mental health and well-being workshops into orientation. So kind of exactly what Seija and Chris are doing, and having those videos on the platforms, having those events where they're trying to get students in there learning and growing from these events. So these are just some ideas, ideal thoughts and goals that I hope you leave with from either this presentation or after you look through the toolkit. I want you to leave with an increased awareness on how to support the mental health and well-being of skilled trade students. Maybe thinking about increased diverse supports, some awareness around the destigmatization of mental health, encouraging that help-seeking behavior, seeking out your community mental health organization resources. So having those flyers up on the wall, having those bookmarks, having those in your offices for students to look at, having them on maybe even the TV screens around campus, just increasing the awareness and knowledge of them. It goes a long way. So I want to leave time for questions. So I kind of rushed through a little bit at the end there, but on the screen, you'll see a QR code. If you scan the QR code, it'll take you straight to the toolkit on our website. I'll also put the link in the chat. The toolkit's free to download, print, share, use at your own discretion. If you have any questions about it, or in the spotlights, if you see we're missing a program from your college you think would be beneficial, just let me know. And if we see it as a fit, we can put it right into the toolkit for everyone else to gain knowledge and experience from. But that was a very quick overview of the toolkit, and I want to leave time for questions. So I'm going to stop talking now and pass it to Taryn and the Q&A box.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Selena. And thank you so much, Seija, Chris, and Brian. This was really, really informative. Very, very a great presentation. Folks, if you have any questions, now is the time to put it in our Q&A function, or you can put it in the chat. Either is fine. Maybe we'll wait a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I would like to let you know that our next webinar will be on February 25th at 12 p.m. So it'll be a lunch and learn on Indigenous land-based learning. So it is about cultivating a holistic wellness by connecting with nature. I will put that in the chat. Maybe we'll just wait a few moments for questions. I guess I'll have a question for you, Chris and Seija. What are some goals that you're hoping to achieve in the next few months or by the end of the year that you're hoping to kind of do with this topic?
Wow. I think the goal remains the same. I think is looking for opportunities to increase visibility and being able to have those important conversations. I just feel institutions, in my experience, I'll speak to Cam, we're really good at sending resource information to students, but it rarely involves human contact in terms of the conversation. And I think that is really missing. There is a personal side to this as well. And I think we need to branch out a little bit. And I do really believe in the end, having that peer support, our ultimate goal last year or the year before was to have each program would have a peer mentor within it with mental health first aid training and that kind of thing, and continuing to have partnerships with CMHA, with Chris, Dana, and Trevor, and those in the past that are in other positions, and CICMH. The toolkits, we try and reinvent resources too, and a lot of them already exist. And I think having these important conversations is really, really, really important on a face-to-face level as well. And I also I think to be a bit vulnerable. I understood the partnership with CICMH and with our local CMHA, but I also understand now how important those external resources are. They're just not a phone number that they can do outreach. There's people involved there that care about community well-being as well. And I think through this process over the last year, it's not enough to just be understood. You need to really understand how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, is there anything you would like to add?
Just to tag, I think that the distribution of promotional material is something that in the public sector we struggle with. We really are not very good marketers in some way. You know, it's something that needs investment and needs support. And again, I think when I think of promotional material, we're not just talking about the bookmark, but we're talking about individuals sharing word of mouth, and having peers, you know, having faculty members understand the value that they can bring to individuals. And I think that's key, because I'll tell you honestly, when I think of going to a course, you know, as an individual who's maybe been working in this field for 20 plus years, I don't really want to go to another course, right? And it's that connection that we need to make, to say, you know what, we're worth investing in. And when I think of investing in learning, that's a lifelong process. So if we can instill that kind of thinking, and you know, encourage individuals to continue to grow, because we really can make a huge difference by just learning that language matters now. Language changes over time. So hence the reason that I maybe need to renew my thoughts and my attitudes around certain things, you know. And again, it's that exploration. We're asking students to explore all these services and these programs and supports, and again, we would have to show by example, I guess is what I'm getting at. So I think the peer support, being there on campus, I think is helpful, because, and I've had many conversations with individuals who would say, can we just sit down for a minute? And I recommend that if you do this on your campus, that you always be two people. Don't go by yourself. I always have two individuals, because someone might be in a crisis and someone might need your support in the moment. But again, I've had many conversations where individuals just want to be heard. They want to be heard, and by building that trust and that connection, they will eventually seek the support that they need. And maybe it's not at the campus counseling program, but maybe it is in the community, because that's where they need to be, is in their community. And connecting them with those services is really our job. So in the end, you know, the Center for Innovation on Campus Mental Health is obviously instrumental in bringing us the tools we need, and we just need people to continue to advocate for mental health and mental well-being on our campuses.
That's very well said, Chris. Thank you. We do have a few questions now. One of the questions says, thank you so much for doing this work. Do you have any suggestions on how to increase buy-in and support for these shifts from faculty, instructors, etc., the people who truly make the most contact and impact on these students?
Yeah, my opinion, and I know Brian, it really helps when you can work with the dean or the chairs in the department who support mental health literacy. And I think it boils down to breaking down the stigma that faculty may have with regards to mental health. They're coming from a different experience than our students are going into as well. And I know Brian will likely continue working on this, but the work is huge and faculty need to be part of it. I did try 1 year with CICMH funding to offer mental health first aid training to all faculty, and we had very low buy-in. And I really don't know why that is. It could be a time factor. you know, maybe we didn't promote it well enough with the reasons why. Probably having a conversation would have been useful before just telling people we're offering this. And just like with students, we need to start having honest conversations about mental health. And I think it's often confused with mental illness or mental disease. That would be my recommendation. It's going to be a journey. We're not going to be able to do it overnight. And the partnerships we have across the province and within various community services, I can't say how nice it is to work with CMHA, with Dana, with Chris, with Trevor. Although there's challenges, having that community partnership means you're not alone. To my own team in counseling, they do a terrific job. It's no criticism, but in the end, students also have a choice, just as employees do, where they would like to get resources. So students need to be provided with variety, as well as faculty or administrators or support staff. It's not just a one-stop solution. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Brian.
Yeah, I recognize that this is a real issue, right? So getting faculty on board is key because they have that influence with the students. And entire industries, it's not just the trades industry, there are other industries as well who have this, you know, really nature of I have to be tough and I can't show weakness, and vulnerability is weakness, right? So all I can suggest is that times are changing. And what's happening in industry with the people retiring is also happening with our faculty. And we're hiring newer, younger faculty, and they are coming with a different understanding of the world. So you can pick your champions, and then you kind of work with those champions who have a different understanding, who went through high school at a different time, who are entering industry at a different time, who are um, have a completely different point of view, and leverage those champions wherever you can, because they may be new and they may be, you know, trying to make their way within this team of people who are different, but they will see the problems because they're part of that team of faculty, and you can absolutely count on them to advocate on behalf of those students. So don't give up hope. There's change coming.
Thank you for that. We'll go for two more questions. I know we're running out of time, and maybe I'll say that maybe Chris, Seija, and Brian, if people want to contact you, would it be okay if we provided your email? I think we'll put it up on our website when we put the recording up, because I do see a question that says, is there a way to stay up to date on the current project? Brian mentioned that his goal is to embed mental health education in the curriculum, and they want to stay updated on their progress. So that might be the best way to do that. I know, so you may have answered one of the questions.
Yeah, briefly.
But this is a
Yeah.
really, really good question, because one of the questions says, one of the issues we face with doing outreach to trade students is the compressed time frame of their programs and the tight schedule they have. We would like to include mental health modules into their curriculum, but can't seem to fit it in to the limited hours they have available. Do you have any recommendations for this?
My experience working with Brian, particularly with apprentices, is that he provided us with a decent block of time to meet with them. We're actually, for accessibility, we have an hour and a half. We have an individual going in to complete the essential skills for Ontarians in trades report. Because they're here for a compressed time, we're able to get some data in terms of what areas they're struggling in, provide the appropriate accommodations, and as well as the mental health and wellness piece. I think we still need to grow it. It's information sharing, but I think being able to have people on site within the trades area is at least part of the solution to help faculty as well as the student body and getting those peer supports available.
Yeah.
I could just add really, really quickly, you know, if we provide the students with accommodations here at the college, they get to have those accommodations when they write their certificate of qualification exams. And that seems to have been this year a big hook to get them to at least consider talking to somebody about their challenges. And because this C of Q exam really frightens them, right? It's this future thing that they have to do, and maybe it's the one thing that gets them to admit, okay, I've been struggling all along. Maybe I can talk to somebody about how I struggle, and then if there's an accommodation, I get that accommodation as well. It seems to have given us a bit of a lever there.
For sure. And then final question will go, and then we'll end the webinar. Is there access to knowledge keepers to support Indigenous students to stay in a program? Sometimes when a student goes out in the field, they experience guilt and worry for the land. Example, construction site, smell of the earth being dug up.
I know at Cambrian we have access, Indigenous students have access to elders and for support. To be perfectly honest, can we do a better job? Absolutely. I do know we have representation from Wabnode, which is our Indigenous center down in trades, but it may also require, instead of a staff, it may require an elder going down as well to support those students. And I think we have to think long and hard about who and when probably that we're able, what supports are required for the students. And we just haven't gotten that far within the planning, but that's an excellent point.
And we have invited them down. They do breakfast study programs where they provide breakfast, and there's kind of like a quiet study area for students. They do have access to that same room. They've actually brought in an artist and painted a large mural on the wall, which is amazing. I'm hoping to get the same artist into my office because brick isn't very attractive, right? There's a lot of things we can do, and I'm open to working with Wabnode to have them come and let me know how they want to support within this area.
Okay, thank you so much. This is a great set of questions and really insightful answers. Thank you everybody for joining us for this webinar today. And again, if you would like to check out any of our past webinars, or if you want to check out our website or our course that helps students recognize, respond, and refer to mental health challenges and signs, you can go to these following websites that I'm going to put into our chat. But again, thank you so much. I think we're at the end here, and I really, really appreciate this great knowledge sharing. And it's always good that when we are able to come together and share experiences and share what we're doing on campus. I think this is the best way to sort of expand and increase capacity among everyone. All right.
Thanks for being a great host.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.